So at this point I'm going to hand over to Dr. Katie Slocombe. And I should say that Katie is a fundamental part of the Scottish Primate Research Group. She was trained in St Andrews. She's now slightly further afield, so she's a lecturer in psychology in York, and she's just travelled up from York. But as far as we're concerned, the Scottish Primate Research Group is just sort of extending a little sort of pseudo-pod to York. So, okay, here's a pointer, and I think the clicker should still work. And Katie, we go over there with Joseph.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you very much for the invitation to come and just give you a quick update on what we've been doing here in the Budongo Trail. Okay, so just to give you an overview, first of all, I'm just going to try and give a brief history of the setup of here and the introduction of the chimps into this new facility, and then just focus on two research projects that I've completed since we've got the current group of chimps here. So first of all, focusing on their social behaviour that followed the integration of the two groups here, and then also a project that we've been doing on their vocal behaviour. And then finally just finishing with a kind of vision for what we hope to be achieving in the next couple of years here in the Budongo Trail. Okay, so we're sitting in it now. We are in the Budongo Trail. I think we're somewhere over here. As you can see, it's a fantastic facility. It's one of the biggest chimpanzee facilities in the world, and it's quite unique in the fact that it allows the chimps to express their natural social system in that they have the space to choose who they associate with. So unlike most zoos, where all the chimps are in an enclosure all together, here they can choose. So they've got the pod here, they've got a pod over there, pod at the front, or the outdoor enclosure. And except when it's being cleaned, they have the freedom to choose where they want to go. So if they don't like another chimp, rather than being forced to sit next to him, they can actually just choose, oh, if you're going to come in here, I'm going to go out there. And that it enables them to mirror much more closely the natural behaviour of their wild cousins. So it really is a phenomenally excellent new facility. So the first guys to come into this in 2008 were the original 11 Edinburgh chimps, and they settled in very well. And then in 2010, 11 Dutch chimps arrived. So the idea is this facility is capable of holding 40 chimps in total. So the idea is to get some other chimps in, we can get some breeding going, hopefully we will get more chimps in the end. But this posed a really great challenge for the zoo as to how to get the original 11 Edinburgh chimps getting on nicely with their new 11 Dutch cousins. So just to give you a bit of background on that, for those of you unfamiliar with chimps, they are incredibly territorial, they're very xenophobic, they don't like new individuals that they don't like, and in the wild, particularly if adult males meet other adult males that they're unfamiliar with, they will be incredibly violent with each other with an aim to killing each other. So, given that we had 6 males in this group and 6 adult males in this group, it's quite a big challenge to get those guys to get together and not kill each other. So, how did the zoo go about doing this? Well, actually, it all happened remarkably smoothly, and really, I was really surprised how quickly it happened. So the zoo managed to successfully integrate them into a single group within 4 months. And they did this by creating a third group out of the existing individuals. So this here just shows you the original Scottish individuals, so the 11 of them here, and then here the original Dutch individuals with the 11 individuals here. And when each individual goes purple, that indicates that they have joined this third group, the supergroup. So you can see the founding members were Louis and David from the Scottish group and Pearl and Helene from the Dutch group. So these founding members, and then gradually individuals were introduced to them, and you can see they tried to do it so that there was a balance of power between the two original groups, and they left the trickiest individuals to last, so the most dominant males, who were likely to be the most aggressive, weren't introduced till right at the end to give the other individuals time to actually bond with each other and kind of make friends and have some kind of support network there before the kind of more rowdy guys got thrown in. So it all went very well, and again I think it's a real testimony to the skill and expertise of the keepers and the management here that this all went without serious injury to any chimps, and it continues to be a success. So fantastic job done by all. So we were then interested, well, now we've got this single group, but from two very different original groups, how are the social dynamics in this group going to evolve over time? So I led a fantastic team of both keepers and researchers to collect long-term social data on this group as things started to happen. So my postdoc, Anne Schell, who's currently in Uganda, kind of started all this data collection, and then I've supervised both keepers and a number of short-term researchers who've come in and kind of and collected this data on the chimpanzees. So what do we know? So basically in the first 16 months since integration, well, if we first of all just focus on interactions that happen between original members of the two groups, we can see that aggression between the two groups has significantly decreased over time. So here we're plotting weeks since integration, and up here the rate of aggressive encounters per hour. And you can see that overall also they're quite low. So aggression has remained low even all the way through. Even in the early days there was not a serious amount of aggression. But so aggression from between the two original groups has gone down, and conversely grooming, so that's a sign of friendship or affiliation in chimpanzees, has gone up significantly over time. So it seems like they're getting used to each other, and they're starting to actually form friendships between these original groups. And this is also indicated by a more complex analysis that we did that was led by Nico Claudier, Andy's postdoc, called social network analysis. So this enables us to really look at the different relationships between all of the individuals across this whole group. And it enables us to try and identify if there are subgroups within this now supergroup of 22. So it enables us to print pretty pictures like this one. So this is taken from early on in the integration, so the first kind of 5 to 6 months. So in blue we have Dutch individuals, and in red we have Scottish individuals. So you can see from this diagram, so this is based on their association data, so this is who they choose to be near. So the observers will be watching, say, this pod that's behind the screen. They'll record everyone that's there, and so how many of those are Edinburgh originals, how many of those are Dutch originals, and also who they choose to spend time in very close proximity to. So who are their nearest neighbours when we're collecting this data. So this is what it illustrates, and you can see that there, and so the thickness of the lines indicates the strength of the relationship. So you can see that the Dutch lot are still very closely bonded as a group, and the Edinburgh lot are still very closely bonded as a group, with really quite minimal interaction between the two groups. You can also see that Helene, one of the founding members, and Edith are really central in bridging the gap between these two groups. So how do things progress as time goes on? Well, you can see that then if we look at a much later period, so this is kind of over the anniversary of them being together a year, that actually there are many, many more connections between the two groups. And again, it's many more individuals who are kind of central in that kind of crossover between the groups. So it's not just going through those two key individuals as it was before. And in fact, interestingly, Pearl has taken a real backseat in this and kind of backed out from that bridging role. But importantly, you can still see that although there is much more interaction, there are still two very distinct subgroups here. So again, it's some of the reason that I think the integration has gone so well is that the physical environment here supports them still being able to preferentially choose to spend time with individuals that they're more comfortable with. Okay, so that just gives you an overview of how the integration happened and how things are progressing, and this is something we're going to continue to monitor. So I just wanted to quickly now tell you about a vocal behaviour study that we completed. So I'm particularly interested in the chimpanzees' food-associated calls. So chimpanzees, when they find calls, find food, tend to give calls. And so I'm interested in a number of different features of this behaviour. So work that I did as part of my PhD back in 2003 and 4 indicated that the work with this original Edinburgh group, that actually when they encounter food of different qualities and different types, they produce different kinds of calls. And we followed that up to actually say that not only from the production point of view is this happening, but actually listening chimps are sensitive to this information and can work out what kind of food is available just by listening to the calls of another chimp. For those of you that are going to be here this afternoon, this is work I'll talk in more detail about this afternoon. So the question for now and to do with the integration was, well, what do the chimpanzees do when they encounter a different culture of calling? So it's a question I get a lot when I give talks to the public is, well, would a German chimp understand what an Edinburgh chimp is talking about? If you could get them together, could they have a conversation? And actually, we were in a unique position to actually try and answer that question with the integration here at Edinburgh. So I wanted to know, do they actually converge on a new call for a food, if they've got different calls originally? And is there any indication that they changed the call structure with exposure to a different way of calling? And this again is a more fundamental question related to the control that the chimps have over their vocal production. So is it voluntarily controlled, and can they actually change the structure of their calls? Or is it largely innate and something they don't really have much control over? Okay, so what we did is when they very first arrived, so ideally before integration, but or a little bit into the early integration, we had a study period, and then we came back in a year's time after they'd been exposed to each other for a whole year. And we collected two sets of data. So first of all, we went about trying to understand, well, what do the chimps actually think of different foods? So what value do they attribute to different food types? And we found that apples were an excellent food where we got a really nice disagreement between the original groups. So pre-integration, the Edinburgh chimps think that apples are pretty rubbish. In contrast, the Dutch lot think they're amazing, absolutely one of their top foods. So we've got a really nice change or difference in opinion as to how great apples are. Then a year later, post-integration, we retested this and found that nothing had changed. So their preferences had stayed very stable. So just being exposed to someone else having a different reaction to food has not changed how they react to the food themselves. So how does this map on to how they produce calls to this food? Okay, so pre-integration, the Edinburgh chimps are giving quite low-pitched, noisy grunts that sound a little bit like this. Oh, I don't know if we'll have sound.
We're supposed to have, but yeah.
No. Okay. I'm quite good at imitating, so we'll go with that. So the Edinburgh guys, in response to apple pre-integration, were giving a kind of really noisy, low-pitched. The Dutch guys, on the other hand, were giving a much higher pitched kind of sound to this. Really quite a nice difference. We could measure these calls, they are statistically different, so distinct calls being given. So now the really crunch question. So you've spent a year knowing that these individuals give very, very different calls. So have you kind of converged in the middle? Are you giving kind of now a middle call after being exposed to this? Has one group shifted to then calling as the other group does? Or has everyone just resolutely continued doing what they've always done? And unfortunately, it's the latter. So there is no indication that they have changed their call structure at all after being exposed to the way that the other group are calling. So what can we conclude for this? So at the moment we've got no evidence that they've converged their calls at all, so they're still remaining very separate. And we also know that neither their preferences or their call structure has changed with exposure to a different culture of doing things. But let's remember back to the social network analysis, so I don't give up complete hope that it's not possible that they may eventually change their calls, because if we remember the social network analysis, although their relationships are getting more friendly to each other, they still clearly much prefer individuals from their own group who still call like them. So it could be that at the moment they don't have very much motivation to actually change anything to do with their calling, because they're not looking to particularly affiliate with these other guys at the moment. But this may change over time. So this summer I've got students who are going to come back and repeat this. So 2 years later on, do we then see any change? And hopefully that, because the social data will show that they are getting much more closely related. And again, so one other really critical question that I would love to have the time to address: if they don't change, can listening individuals actually understand what each other's grunts are referring to? So if you play back an Edinburgh chimp, one, does he understand, although he wouldn't give that call to apples, if he hears it from a Dutch individual, that does refer to apples? So that's a really interesting question for the future. Okay, so just looking ahead for the future, we're going to continue with this long-term social data, and we hope that this will enable us to continue to map the social dynamic changes in the group, and again, then be able to look at things. So hopefully we'll have some births in the near future, in the next couple of years. What effect does that have on the group? Does it change how active they are, how much time they spend playing? Does it change relationships within the group? And again, it's important for us and the keepers to be able to keep a good monitor on behaviours that are relevant for welfare. So we hope by doing this, it will be a help to individual researchers with their projects, it will enable us to answer these bigger questions, and it will help the zoo staff with management decisions. So hopefully that will be useful. But alongside this observational work, we also really hope to get the experimental work up and running. So we're going to instigate a very regular routine for the chimps, where there are certain hours where they can come in, and they know they can come into the bed area and actually participate in individual things. And at the beginning it will just be come in, choose some food, have it, leave, brilliant. Everything's going to be terribly nice, and hopefully we're going to get them really motivated and wanting to come in to do some tests. And then hopefully that will enable us to open the door to a whole new range of research questions that we can ask, much akin to what's possible in Leipzig, which Josep will talk about later. So that's hopefully the vision of what we're going to achieve in the next couple of years. And thank you very much to all of those people without whom that research would not have been possible. Thank you.